Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for a little bit of patience as we get the technology sorted here in what is COVID 2020. Good afternoon. My name is Tammy Terwelp, and I am the Executive Director of Aspen Public Radio. And I just want to say welcome to everyone who's joining us today. I'm sure you're really excited to hear from one of our favorite NPR hosts, Scott Simon. We sent this event announcement out to our libraries across the valley, the Aspen School District, bookstores, our NPR colleagues, listeners and supporters, and countless more. This is such an amazing, true community event. Scott retweeted it, of course, to his more than 1 million followers on Twitter. So we're very honored for his help to highlight the good work of Aspen Public Radio and Challenge Aspen as well. So our mission here at Aspen Public Radio is to support, nourish, and enrich our community, and we're doing just that today. We're excited to be able to host this public event virtually with our friends at Challenge Aspen. And Challenge Aspen, a little bit about them, helps provide year-round outdoor adaptive experiences for individuals faced with a cognitive or physical disability. And of course, they play such a big role in our community, and especially with the winter season coming up, we love seeing everyone out on the slopes. So I'd like to thank Challenge Aspen for their support and partnership on this event. They actually came to us earlier this year after Sunnyside Plaza was published to talk about how we could partner because they knew the book was so very special. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to their CEO, Jeff Hauser, to say a few words about their vision for today's event. Jeff?
Thank you very much, Tammy, and welcome everyone. As Tammy mentioned, I'm Jeff Hauser. I'm the CEO of Challenge Aspen. I consider that a really good fortune. And you know, Challenge Aspen loves its long-standing relationship with Aspen Public Radio. With their help and support and technology, we were able to bring you this fun and I think very timely event today and to share it with as many people that wanted to get on. This is truly a community event. We have advertised and electronically connected with our participants, families, donors, staff, board members, everybody who's a friend of the organization. We have tried to get this word out that we were doing this event today. So it is truly a community event. And we know we wouldn't exist without that whole cadre of people supporting us and donating to us and volunteering with us and doing all the things that they do. A huge thanks to Scott for being part of this community event with us today. His book, Sunnyside Plaza, is such a great fit for Challenge Aspen and our values and our mission. You know, his themes of kindness and inclusion are really core to Challenge Aspen's 25-year history and our stated mission. I'm just going to sort of quickly go through our stated mission because, and I'll read this to you, so just bear with me. It's very short, but I don't want to miss anything because we spent a lot of time getting the wording of this correctly. You know, Challenge Aspen is dedicated to impacting the lives through year-round adaptive experiences for individuals faced with cognitive, service-related, and/or physical disabilities. Challenge Aspen creates life-changing opportunities by encouraging participation in activities designed to redefine limits, recognize abilities, and transfer newfound courage to everyday life. The core of our mission really is summarized by we try to create possibilities for people with disabilities. So we have the great luck and great fortune of being able to work with our special and gifted participants and their families every day. We get to see their courage, their gifts, their determination, and the desire that we all share, which is to build a happy life for themselves. So I get paid to go to work and get inspired by people who are trying to do what we're all trying to do. And Scott's book really touches upon their special gifts and talents and their ability to adapt and go for the same things that we're all going for. So I want to turn it back to Tammy and thank you for this great opportunity to be part of today's event.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Just a couple of housekeeping things that you guys are probably familiar with now after doing Zoom and GoToWebinars for a while. But just as a reminder, you should be already on mute with your camera off. However, if you have a question, please use the chat box to ask, and we will pass it to Scott for some Q&A that we will have plenty of time for today at the end of the reading. We are recording this webinar, and once again, we're thankful for your support. You help make programming like this possible. And now for our main event, I'm going to take just a few short moments to introduce Scott Simon, who most of you know very well. Of course, Scott is the host of NPR's Weekend Edition Saturday, and is also one of the hosts of NPR's morning news podcast, Up First. He's reported from all 50 states and on 5 continents. In addition to his work for NPR, Scott has written articles for the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, Wall Street Journal, and the Guardian. He's pretty much won every major award in broadcasting, including a Peabody, the Emmy, Columbia DuPont, Robert F. Kennedy Journalism Award. So we're so very thankful to have such a talented person here to speak with us in person today. I will say that more near and dear to my heart is that Scott's a Chicago's Cub fan, as am I. Go Cubbies. Had to get that shout out in there. He's a very talented author. Sunnyside Plaza is his 9th book, and his very first for children. He's got 2 children himself. So I'm just so excited to welcome Scott Simon, and thankful for his time to be with us today to share his incredible work and provide some uplifting information and celebration in these times. So please join me in welcoming the author of Sunnyside Plaza, Scott Simon.
Well, Tammy, thank you very much. And you may have noticed I actually have a scene in the book that's set in Wrigley Field, and a couple of scenes set overlooking Wrigley Field. This is Sunnyside Plaza, is a home for developmentally challenged adults that is situated in the little universe there that you put into a novel, about 4 blocks away from Wrigley Field on the north side of Chicago. It is certainly patterned on a place that I worked at when I was about 19 and 20. And, you know, I took it because it was a job and the hours were congenial and I could do my homework and call people on the phone. But I never met a group of people. It struck me so much. It was just said in the introduction and the mission statement, people who had so many gifts, people of such courage, people of such determination, changed my life really. Not to the point that it made me want to go into that kind of work professionally. It's much easier to be a journalist or a writer, but opened my eyes as to what's in the world, opened my eyes as to being able, I hope, to see into human beings differently. And for years, I've been looking for an opportunity to write something, something that would kind of mark how much I'd learned from so many people who'd grown so important to me when I was young, opened so many apertures of the heart and the mind for me. And it was finally the process of having 2 daughters, pretending to rear them. You begin to realize what you really want to impart to them that is important. And I began to talk about my days at what in the book is called Sunnyside Plaza. There is a street on the north side of Chicago called Sunnyside. I worked at a place called The Approved Home, 909 West Wilson Avenue. Wilson Avenue isn't such a great title for a book, so I moved it 1 block up to Sunnyside. And if I say so, I mean, it was a wonderful opportunity, wonderful experience. I was able, our oldest daughter in particular, who's now 17, make her a part of the writing and drafting and evaluation experience. I remember living in some fear as I sent her and her best friend Adelaide the first draft, and they let me, you know, they let me kind of squirm for a couple of days before they wrote back and told me what they thought. And it's a book that's very important to me, that not just commemorates but vivifies a group of people who taught me a lot about life. And I hope the implicit message is there that life is filled with opportunities for that, and for love, and for reflection, and for getting to know each other in a different way, and I owe those people a great debt, and I'm glad to finally be able to write about so many of them, at least implicitly in this book, Sunnyside Plaza, and to pass that kind of sensation and experience on to younger readers. So I am going to read a section right from the beginning. I want to take you into the narrative if I can, because the narrator is not me, is not someone who works in the home. The narrator is someone who lives in the home, a 19-year-old woman who is known as Sal Gal. Her name is Sally Miyake. And I tried insofar as I can to capture what I thought her narrative style would be as she took in the world and as she addressed it. Let me just begin to read. I might every now and then stop and explain things as we go along. Sally says, I can't read, but I learn a lot of things. Bricks are made of clay. Vitamin D comes from the sun. The sun is millions of miles away. There are 8 times 4 squares of tile on the ceiling of my room. I see that 2 times 8 plus 4 are cracked, and 2 times 8 plus 1 have brown stains, smooth, strong, and satisfying. There are 4 times 8 plus 4 stairs from the 3rd floor to the 1st. Venice is in Italy, but also in Ohio and Florida. Fast, fast, fast relief. Florida has alligators and crocodiles. They're not the same, but both bite. Snap, crackle, pop, or your money back. Gets those hard to reach areas. Shirts have 8 buttons, but I button 7 because I don't button the top. I notice things. Today is April 24, and at 6:04 in the morning, I came down the 4 times 8 plus 4 steps to work. By the way, that date, April 24, I work it into every book. It's our oldest daughter's birthday, April 24. I also work in the birthday of our youngest daughter, which is coming up November 2nd. Also happens to be, by the way, Tammy, the day the Cubs won the World Series. Let me continue. I work in the kitchen of Sunnyside Plaza and live upstairs too, on floor 3. There are 4 other people in my room, Mary, Pilar, Trish, and Sharon, and Ray, Julius, and Tony next door. There are 5 people in the room next to us and 4 people in the room next to them. There are 5 rooms too on floor 2. When I get downstairs in the morning, I always take 8 paper bowls at a time from the kitchen to the dining room. I do this 8 times, so there is a bowl for everybody and a few left over. Conrad, the cook, was already in the kitchen. He had a big, soft red face and a sing-song voice. Good morning, Sal, he called. Check the spoons, too, please. The white plastic spoons were in a small steel tub. I counted 8 spoons, 7 times, and then 6 more spoons. There is 1 for everybody, I told Conrad, and 1, 2, 3, 4 extra. He sipped coffee and looked over at stacks of sliced bread. Ham sandwiches today, he told me. I'll see if we have enough slices of cheddar, too. You like mustard or mayonnaise on yours? I made a face. I remember, Conrad laughed. Nothing on yours, Sal Gal. Have some breakfast, dear, before they all come down. It's the most peaceful time of the day. Not a problem in the world can't be brightened by sunrise. I live here because my mother got sick when I was in her stomach, and then she couldn't take care of me. She went somewhere and hasn't come back. I lived in a few different homes and finally got here to Sunnyside Plaza. I'm 8 times 2 plus 3. My mother will be back when she can take care of me. Sometimes at night I wake and I think I hear my mother in the hallway. I hear her voice or hear someone's voice, and I'm sure it's her. I hear someone take a step and I think it's her. I think she's just about to throw open the door. I hear her say, hey, Sal, let's get out of here. It's hard to get back to sleep, so I sing myself a song she sang to me, and I still hear, hush, little baby, don't say a word. I hear that song in my mother's voice. My name is Sally, sometimes Sal Gal, Sal Pal, or Sally Pally. It helps me feel like different people when I want. Someday, I want to go to the North Pole, too. I want to know how to swim. I want a dog. Hey, Sally Pally, said Darnell. He was usually first for breakfast. Cheerios here? Picture on the box, I told him. Love my Cheerios, he said. Little bitty wheels roll down my throat, roll around in my belly. Darnell had a big belly and patted it like a drum to a tune only he knew. Da-da-da-da-dee-dee-dee, Cheerios going into me. And then Mary, my best friend, and David came down soon and poured some cornflakes. And Julius and Tony and Pilar. There were 2 cartons of milk and 3 cartons of orange juice, and Tony shook cornflakes into a bowl and poured orange juice over them. Ew, said Pilar. You're crazy, went David, but Tony just said, I like them that way. Corn and orange. Corn is orange. Orange corn. You are crazy, Darnell agreed. Can I try? The red light from outside flashed and blinked over our tables. Dorothy, a nurse who worked all night, stepped out quickly. Just eat your breakfast, folks. I have to let in some people. No problem. Just enjoy your breakfast. The front door buzzed. Dorothy opened it. There was 1 man and 1 woman in dark blue who pushed in a small bed on wheels. Dorothy said the elevator was in the back, and the woman said, That's okay, we can carry this. Let's just get up there. We heard their boots on the stairs. They whispered, but we couldn't hear what they said. I'm drawing a cat today, Darnell told everyone. Like the cat I have with my mom. Bunnies are better, said Pilar. People eat bunnies, said Isaac. He'd come down to breakfast, but just stood to watch the blinking red light outside turn around and around. Nobody eats my bunnies, said Pilar. I'll bite people who eat my bunnies. I'm going to make bunny Cheerios, said Darnell. Jimmy, who always wore an old brown army coat, said Birdie. Even when we could see no birds, he heard Bunny and said Birdie for the first time I heard that day. We heard the elevator in the back of the house wheeze and grumble. A little while later, the red light stopped blinking over the room. We heard voices of men and women outside, and then a car, what sounded like a big car, drove away. A little while later, Mrs. Byrne, the nurse who ran everything at the home, came into the room where we had breakfast. Dorothy, too, and Bob, a nurse with a beard and glasses. Mrs. Byrne's dark face was shiny, and she thumped her hand just below her neck a few times as if that would help her get her words out of her mouth. Is everyone here? She finally asked. We all looked around. We saw the cereal, the milk cartons, and the calendar on the wall, and pictures of kittens. I wanted page 1 to stay up all the time. The little orange kitten with white paws and a pink nose asleep in a heart-shaped candy box. But they had to flip the page. Sometimes when no one else was nearby, I flipped to that page and looked at that kitten. I look for Matt, Keisha, and Vi, who don't talk or move much, but eat with spoons and look out wherever they are at whatever is in front of them. They were there. I didn't see Stu, Dennis, Lawrence, or Charlene. They usually came a little late because they got to the bathroom later. Mary said, Talia's still upstairs. She said she doesn't like cereal. She says she wants toast. She says, I'll have to talk to her after this, said Mrs. Byrne. And I don't see Marcus. Still in the bathroom, said Isaac, and a few people began to giggle. We could hear him. He was going, oh, wow. Yo. Marcus, too, said Mrs. Byrne. I'll talk to everyone when I can, but I have some sad news, I'm afraid. It's Lawrence. Lawrence won't be here anymore. There was a silence. His mother brought him home, I asked. No, said Mrs. Byrne, not quite, dear, but in a way, you see, God brought Lawrence home. God brought him home to his mama? Asked Darnell. That red light. I thought it was God, said Mary. But I could see Conrad take off the white cap he wore in the kitchen and come around the serving table to put a hand on Mary's shoulder. Maybe I better start again, said Mrs. Byrne. Lawrence, he's dead. He died last night in his sleep. The paramedics were just here and say it looks like what they call a stroke in his head, but Lawrence was asleep. It was very peaceful, I'm sure. That nice man and woman in blue took him away, but Lawrence, I'm afraid Lawrence is gone. He's dead. Will he be back for lunch? Asked Darnell. Should we save his cookie? Just going to read a few pages more into chapter 2. After breakfast, we talked about Lawrence being dead while Tony and Mary and Pilar and Darnell and I worked in the kitchen with Conrad. I'd put down 4 slices of bread and plop a plastic spoon of mayonnaise on each slice and slide it around until the bread was wet and white to the edges. Mary pulled off a slice of ham and put one down each on 2 slices of bread. Tony would pull off a slice of orange cheese, lay it down on the other 2 slices. Then I'd flip the slice with ham over the slice with cheese and slide them back and forth until the edges matched. After 4 sandwiches were done, Conrad would put a hand on the top of the sandwich and slice the bread with a long knife. Why do you cut it across instead of up and down? Conrad thought for a moment. Because I think it shows a little extra care, Sal Gal, he told me. Don't just do the least you can do, put some extra care in it. But you always do, he told me. You spread that mayo right to the edge. People get in every little bite. You even up the slices. That's why I like working with you, Sal. You do things right. I like working with Conrad, too. Sometimes he told us stories about when he was the cook on a submarine. I had to like my cooking down there, he said. What are they going to do? Swim out to a hot dog stand? I know lots of dead people, said Tony. Tony always knew a lot about everything. No big thing, he told us. Some people are alive, some people are dead. But you don't see dead people, right? Asked Mary. Well, they see us, said Tony. They look over us all the time. Ooh, I told him, all the time in the bathroom? They don't care, said Tony. They're dead. But Mary pulled a slice of ham away from the pile and asked, where do dead people go? Heaven, said Tony. Up there. Up where? Asked Mary. In the sky, I told her. Above, way above the sky. Like outer space? Above that even, I told her. Heaven is a place all with clouds, said Tony. People sit in clouds, they sleep on clouds, they eat clouds, they look down at us and laugh because down here we need food, clothes, shoes. Up there, only clouds. I don't think I'd like that, said Mary. I'd get cold. I'd like it, said Darnell. Swimming through clouds, looking down, just floating along. Mrs. Burns says we won't see Lawrence because he's dead, said Tony. Somebody else will take his bed and clothes. Doesn't Lawrence need them? Asked Darnell. He's going to wear just clouds? Conrad began to pick up sandwiches 2 at a time and put them on trays. Heaven is your reward, he told us. A reward for a life well lived. It's eternal, life forever. I told you dead people come back, said Darnell. Not exactly, Darnell, Conrad told him. Dead people have lives up there with God. I don't know God, Darnell pointed out. Why can't I just stay here with my friends? Conrad smiled and told him, well, my friend, I guess we're not the ones who actually get to decide when we go to our reward. A reward, said Mary, as if she was hearing the word all over again. I can't wait for a reward. But Conrad turned around with his arms filled with sandwiches, blew some hairs from his forehead, and said, no need to hurry, Mary Berry. No need to hurry. Make the most of what we have right in front of us. So I think that's what I'm going to read, and then ask for your questions. I so admire Little Brown for taking on this book, because as you can see in the first chapters, I violated the most important rules of children's literature. I had the narrator slightly older than a child, and I opened with a death. And a lot of books for children, a world I have begun to know a little bit, certainly as a father, and then even now as a so-called writer, they're taking on the most intense and potentially controversial topics really in the world right now, but they still don't like to open with a death. And I admire Little Brown for saying, no, that's right. It's the good thing to do. So in any event, I hope that gives you some insight into the world I've tried to capture and depict in Sunnyside Plaza. And I hope you all get a chance to read the book. And I think if you do, you will be touched and inspired by the many lives and many stories you encounter there. Well, Tammy, what can I do to help now?
Thank you. What a great, inspiring, heartfelt passages that you read in the book. Thank you so much for that. I do have one tiny request that had come in from someone. If you would be able to read a passage that, I don't know if you're reading from your manuscript or the actual book.
Actual book, yeah.
Great. So there's a passage that a person had written in that said that really touched them. It is on page 182.
I ought to be able to find that.
And it's the paragraph that starts with, I know I'm different.
Oh, I know the speech. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to give away the denouement in the book, but somebody, to give him the benefit of the doubt, somebody who said, somebody who thought he was using the right term when he said people here are different. Well, here, I'm going to read a little bit to set it up. His name, I don't want to say the bad guy, but George Nellos is his name. He said, he says, well, let me read what he says before. He says to Conrad the cook, look, I love what you do for them. They're good people, but Connie, what kind of lives do they have with their challenges, or whatever you have to call it these days? They look at the walls, they stare at screens. They don't know if it's Tuesday or Friday. The way they walk, talk, and draw, you see the scribbles of a 5-year-old and think, hey, another Picasso. You look at the scrawls of these grown folks and think, how depressing. I don't blame the folks, Connie. They're just different. It's how they were born. I bet if their parents could have known how they'd be, they'd wish they'd never been born. I know I would. Salgal says, it was hard for me to look at Conrad, but I did. I dropped up. Well, she goes on. Let me get to Salgal's speech. So George Nellos is leaving. George Nellos didn't turn around, but he also didn't leave, so I kept talking. And here's what Salgal says. I know I'm different, I said. I may not know if it's Tuesday or Wednesday, or how to ride the bus alone, or walk to the park by myself, or how to tie my shoes. But I know my friends. I know when people like me. I know when I like them. I like to work. I like people. I like to draw dogs and cats. I give them smiles and they make people happy. I'm glad I was born. And I'm glad that I'm different than you. I'm sorry. I did that while writing it too. Let me read a little more. George kept his hand on the knob of the door for a little while, then pulled it open and left without turning around. We heard birds in the alley and another car and then a bus and then George's truck cough and begin to drive away. Conrad held the white cloth of the cook over his eyes for a moment, and at the moment he came to me. He put his head on my shoulder and his white hat fell off and it hit the floor, and we all laughed. Me and Conrad, Darnell, Tony, Pilar, Esther Rivas, and London Bridges. They're 2 Chicago cops who investigate what's going on at the home. And then Mrs. Byrne, who'd come in. We all had our arms around each other and laughed until we had tears in our eyes and began to cough, and then we had to laugh some more. I never laughed so much in my whole gosh darn life, said Conrad. Pardon my French. Darnell said, I think I laughed so much I wet my pants. You did, said Pilar. We laughed and laughed again some more, and the laughs bounced and bounced off all the black pans and silver pots and the hard white walls and the shiny cool steel counter. Sorry, I'm glad they asked me to read that.
What a touching passage. It's hard to not be moved by that, and clearly even you as an author who has read that over many, many times, still really touches your heart. I'm gonna check just a little bit to hear quickly to see if we've got some questions. We have one question that we have is what is some of the feedback that your daughters gave you during this process? I think that is so generous to say to your teenage daughters, what do you think about this? So what's some feedback that they gave you?
They noticed things I didn't. For example, I gave the same name to 2 characters who reside in the home. And of course, that'll happen in life, but it's probably not a good idea in a book. And I had, that had escaped me. They also told me to keep it short. They said it was an intense experience and that it shouldn't be any longer than The Old Man and the Sea. And which they had enjoyed reading. It affected them a lot. And I came within, I think, about 3,000 words of that. was impressed that they did not seem thrown at all that the narrator was 19 or was differently abled. They were able to see and feel and live with Sal Gal, and for that matter, the other people around her, as people. And that's exactly what I wanted. And I was able to say to Little Brown, you know, because the story meant so much to me, I would have done anything to get it told. And at one point, I considered making a kind of adolescent character who you glimpse in the book. There's a teenager named Miriam, who was the daughter of Esther Rivas and Rob Bartelstein, a couple. Esther is a Chicago police officer. Rob is her husband, happens to be a lawyer, and she gets to know Sal Gal a little. And at one point, I was going to try and expand on that. I even wrote a few exploratory chapters, and I tried it out on my children, and they said, no, it's not bad, but it's not as different that way. Stay with Sal Gal. And that's what I said to Elvina Ling, the head of Little Brown. And she said, I agree with your daughters.
It's great. That's so special that they got to be a part of that book, you know, with you.
Yeah.
So that is so amazing and fantastic. You have very, very wise children. Let's see here. We have another question. It's been a really challenging year, of course, for so many reasons. Do you consider it fate that you couldn't do a book tour on this for Sunnyside Plaza? Do you feel like you're missing anything with connecting with your readers? You know, since we all have had to move to a different venue.
Yeah, I was actually just about to begin in a serious way the tour for Sunnyside Plaza, and then everything was. In fact, I'd taken the week off, although I was up in New York to do a theater story. I saw what may have been the last performance of Company with Patti LuPone and Christina Link. I hope they do put that show on again, but when live theater returns, God bless. But in any event, and I was taking the Acela home, eerily empty. And my family and I are preparing to take off the next day to fly to the Arizona Book Festival. You know, got email while I was on the train saying we have to cancel the festival for the obvious reasons. I did get to make a couple of appearances before schools in the Boston area. And I had just a wonderful time. I thought it was great. And I love talking to the youngsters, and I love being with them. And I learned a lot, and we had a great time. I could certainly tell that sometimes some of the teachers were a little more excited about having me come to the school than the youngsters were. More than one youngster told me, yeah, I recognize your voice up in the back of the car when we're driving to such and such. And it's I think I spoke before 4 classes and like a library group in Boston schools. And every time I asked for questions, and I mean every time, one question was always, do you have any pets? and which is a great question. And I enjoyed telling them, well, yes, as a matter of fact, we have a dog named Daisy, who was a French poodle, and I am Daisy's interpreter. And they would begin to laugh, and I would say, well, you know, I have a kind of telepathic relationship with Daisy, and I kind of know what she's saying. So, for example, when we walk Daisy and people want to pet her, she goes, ha ha, I am cute, huh? You find me irresistible. A little pet there, right? A little pet there. And, you know, I would tell them stories about how whenever I'd be like eating a piece of matzah with hummus or peanut butter, I would look at Daisy's eyes, and she would look up at me adoringly and say, I worship the ground you walk on. Now spill something so I can eat it, you know. And I would interpret for Daisy, and I think this had knocked the kids out. They just loved it. They just loved hearing that. And it became so persistent. I mean, it still is. I'm still Daisy's interpreter. This summer, our daughters, I can't believe it's Aspen. It's lots of new agey stuff in Aspen, I can admit. Our daughters even heard about a pet psychic and consulted the pet psychic and asked the pet psychic, what does Daisy think about the voice that our father does for her? And according to the pet psychic, Daisy said, I know it doesn't sound anything like my voice, but our father seems to enjoy it, so why don't we let him have his fun? I'm sorry, I don't think you need to be a pet psychic to figure that out. But in any event, that's what the. So yes, I wish I could have had a book tour. I wish I could have gone, the plans we had coast to coast and everything. But that's that's not in the cards for anyone right now.
Mm-hmm. Maybe there's a book in Daisy's voice in your future.
She does write haiku, she's she's a French poodle. I mean, they're so intelligent. I mean, my God, sometimes I get up early in the morning, I'm here in my office and Daisy's already logged in reading Le Monde, I say, Daisy, I've got some work to do. She goes, oh, yeah, when I am done, huh? All right. I am not going to get our poodle her own tablet. Okay, sorry, I draw the line there.
There's gotta be a line. We've got some other questions here. What comments have you heard back from children or those outside of what's your pet like, but from people who have disabilities who have read the book? How have they connected with the book, and what have they told you?
It has meant a lot to people in those circumstances, and people who run programs that try and address some of those critical needs that we have in our society. That's been very gratifying. That was in fact one of the things I was trying to do with the book tour, was to try and draw attention to a number of organizations that are involved in that kind of work, and it involved making a lot of appearances with folks who I would get to meet, and really never had that opportunity. We even had there's a program. I don't know if they have a home in Aspen. I assume they have one, maybe in Colorado, a Jesuit program called Larch, which there are communal living facilities for people who are living with disabilities, and both of our children have been involved in their program, just spending time with people there, and spending time, being friends, being part of that community, and we were hoping to be of some use, because those needs go on, and maybe when the paperback comes out next year, maybe there's an opportunity for that. I hope
so. Let's see, we've got another question on, do you anticipate writing more children's books? And if so, without spilling the beans, what might some of the themes be on those books, if you are planning on going down this road again?
I used to say, no, I'll never do it again, and now I don't say that. And I mean, the Publishers Weekly and Kirkus, I mean, all the reviews were just wonderful. I think I might try a picture book. I've had some feelers on that. As long as, I mean, I just also have begun what I hope will be a baseball novel, as a matter of fact. Although it's definitely for adults. Let's put it that way, with some of the language. It does not, by the way, Tammy, involve the Cubs, but a fictitious team called the Chicago Otters, or the Otts, and they do not. They play at National Pork Producers Association Field, because like the White Sox play at Guaranteed Rate Field. So National Pork Producers Association Field. ASSN period. So a lot of the players refer to the stadium, of course, as the ass. And that's definitely for adults. But although it involves a child, there's going to be a 17-year-old child there. The picture book that I just tried with without giving too much away, with a pretty well-known illustrator artist, I mean, it's absolutely a true story because, you know, I don't talk about this to everyone, but we had a zebra who lived on our balcony for a while. And, you know, because the slats in the balcony are like this, Stripey's stripes just blended in. You know, there were people, you know, you couldn't see. And in any event, so we met Stripey on the subway, and it's, you know, it's the story of Stripey. Or the story of Stripey as our family got to know Stripey, and you know, I agree with Elvina Ling of Little Brown that you know, not every children's book or book for young readers needs to have a lesson, but they should have a reason why they read it, even if it's just a giggle. But you know, I hope there's a lot to that. But you know, Stripey is black and white, and for those of us who have mixed families, that, you know, that means something.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for that. So I've got another question here. Do you have some favorite books for young readers right now, or are your children kind of past that point and you're not really paying attention at that?
Sorry. Yeah, they're past that point. What can I tell
Yeah.
you? Our 17-year-old has been, you know, reading Viktor Frankl, and is now on to oh my God, The Heart of the Matter by Graham Greene, and Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. She's like so beyond that, man. And our 13-year-old, who's about to turn 14, has just finished The Diary of Anne Frank. So yeah, darn. But you know, I mean, it's funny. Our dog is named Daisy because of Wonder, the book Wonder. There is a dog in there named Daisy, and I was at first a little upset when they suggested the name Daisy because I don't want to give anything away. But let's just say in the book Wonder, the dog Daisy does not make it to the end of the story, if you know what I mean. I said, oh, we can't do it. We can't do that. But Daisy it is. So I have, you know, I enjoyed reading those books all over again, and the Lunch Lady Mysteries, which I think are absolutely great, and Laurie Holtz Anderson's wonderful books, the Seeds trilogy about the American Revolution as seen through the eyes of two youngsters, I think is just great. And so yeah, I enjoyed all of them.
That's great. Those are very good recommendations for those ages, definitely. Can you talk a little bit more about like the lessons that you learned while you were working as a care aide, and how do you think your life would have turned out differently if you would have stayed in that line of work? So what made you sort of pull to journalism from that aspect of your life after you were working with people in the homes?
You know, I've wondered about that, but I think what that experience helped me to understand about myself was that any gifts I had were more in the line of trying to relate the experience to others than it was actually digging myself into that experience. I found myself fascinated by all of it, and eager and itching to you know, to tell stories and to kind of be a part of the world that way, and to tell others about what I was learning. And you know, I mean, often, you know, the road not taken. I don't know. I don't think about that so much. In that, you know, I think like a lot of people, by the age of 12 or 13, I had probably, in my heart of hearts, concluded I would never be a baseball player. Probably by the age of 14, I had concluded that I just couldn't sing well enough to be a Broadway star. I mean, we could go on and on where you start, you know, throwing stuff over for one reason or another. You know, I think the wonderful thing about the line of work that we're in is that it's relatively open to people of different backgrounds. You know, I think in all ways, backgrounds, orientations. And I think it invites people who can have a sense of involvement in the world and want to share it with each other. And I thought that was, that was an avenue where I might have some chance of being able to communicate with others and to do it in a way that was worthwhile. So, but that is no way devalues. I mean, that was part of the lessons that I learned there when I would finish the workday and want to tell other friends about what was going on there and what I saw there, and becoming really, drawn up in the lives of others. I thought that was very, very important to me, and it was very important. It's interesting, the section that I read from George Nellis, where the character, I remember my first day when I was being shown around the home and got into the common area, and people were sitting at tables and they were drawing, rather, as George Nellis says, and making paper plate clocks and pictures of animals and stuff. And my reaction was exactly the way George Nellis describes his. You see a picture like that, like when our daughters did when they were 4 or 5, and I think, oh, another Picasso. When it's a 60-year-old man, your heart tends to fill with woe. And yet, inside of 3 or 4 days, I was over that, because you just begin to understand the people with whom you're involved are so much more interesting, compelling, courageous, ingenious, enterprising. You stop feeling any sense of pity. You get to know them and enjoy them as people. And that, I think, was absolutely necessary. And I will never forget, one of the most wonderful things about my mother is, I think I'd been working there 2-3 weeks or something. And one night my mother met me there. We were going to go out for dinner, and I didn't know how she would react. On the one hand, I wanted her to see where I was. On the other hand, she didn't even need the 3 or 4 days. She made that transition immediately. And she was talking to everybody, noticing what they wore and clothes, and talking about it and making jokes. And it was just great.
It's fantastic. That's really warming. And just a reminder to everybody, if you do have a question for Scott, you can put it in the chat box of GoToMeeting, and we'll continue to have a good conversation here with Scott Simon. I'd like to know a little bit, somebody here had asked, can you tell us a little bit about just maybe a few of the characters in the book that, and what you admire about each of them? And do any of them represent people that you know?
Yeah, certainly people that I knew. I mean, I even appropriated their names. Tony, Darnell, Pilar were all the names of people I knew in the home, and they are at least 50% modeled of people that I knew in the home. The last one I had any word of and kept in touch with was Tony, who the approved home was broken up years ago, and is now the home of headquarters of a social service agency there on the north side of Chicago at 909 West Wilson. So a lot of the people who were living there when I was there were kind of scattered to other facilities, typically on the north side. And Bob, whose name I appropriate for a nurse, Bob Belusik, magic of Facebook and Twitter, he and I have kept some contact together. He thinks, by the way, it's unfortunate that the nurse with the beard named Bob only makes one appearance in the book, because he thinks, of course, Bob should have been the moral center of the book. He didn't stay in that line of work. He wound up selling art. But in any event, yes, they were all, Darnell, big guy, I always appreciated because he always had such a ready sense of humor, and he was also the first one who could be hurt at any slight or any affront. And I thought that combination was just so wonderful. You wanted to, stretch your arms around him. Pilar, I particularly admired her ingenuity that she brought to each and every day. She would always figure out a new way to do things, always be looking at other people and seeing what they were doing and figuring out a new way do things. Tony, I always appreciated, for lack of a better phrase, the peace he brought to his life. He was very accepting and seemed to be almost Franciscan sometimes in his philosophy that you accept what you must. That's what that's what he did. And Sharon, who was on my caseload for a couple of occasions through the holidays. Sharon was one of the few people in the home who had any contact with parents. And look, I understand what happens often in families. It's hard. As good as your heart is, it just becomes hard sometimes when that happens within a family. And I must say it's particularly hard sometimes on siblings who feel that there is no room or care or love left over for them because the brother or sister who has disabilities takes up so much care and concern in everyday life, and the relations can be difficult. So I was always struck by how much these holiday visits meant to Sharon, who would build her year around them. And and I understood why they were limited, but I also understood why that's how she planned her life. I mean, she would be talking about Christmas from March. But yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Just want to get back to here. We've got, let's see. It sounds like, this obviously was an incredibly, an experience that has stuck with you in your heart for many, many years. So did you sort of source dialogue from your own memories of conversations with individuals and sort of coming from your own heart as you were experiencing this as a young man?
Yes, I mean there was a certain amount of just memory work of trying to remember things. Also, and I think this is really the province of a novel. There's the whole idea of empathy and imagination, and I mean I think I said I did before the book tour that never was. I did get to appear at the Publishers Convention in Philadelphia. I'm trying to remember. American Book Association Convention in Philadelphia. And, as I said there, insofar as anyone was interested, that I think it's important that people be able to read books where they see characters like themselves reflected. But I also think it is the province of the novel and of literature to introduce people to characters that are not like us at all. And, that to me, I think is in many ways where the novel lives. It's not a repertorial function. It's partially that, obviously, because things have to be true and valid. But I think it's also important that there be an act of empathy and identification and imagination to kind of lift it. Look, because if we all just wrote novels about people like ourselves, and by the way, there's too much of that goes on now anyway. I mean, how many novels have we read about academics who are teaching English in a college town? And we could go on like that. I think it's important to try and reach out. I mean, publishers have talked to me about trying a baseball novel for years, and one of the things that made me think that now would be a good time is well, a number of different things that have happened, but also I was struck. I did a book years ago where I traveled with the great edition of the Chicago Bulls, the ones that were on The Last Dance: Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Luke Longley, who in the corner of my office over there, my home office, I have Luke Longley's basketball. Excuse me, may I show you that?
Sure.
Hold on.
We'll take it.
Hold on. Look
Yeah.
at this. Looks like one of the boats they used that landed at D-Day, doesn't it, come to think of it? Luke Longley's basketball shoe. In any event, I remember talking to some of the athletes then, and you know, they would not infrequently get recruited to visit children's hospitals or like cancer wards in children's hospitals. And oh, there was a certain amount of grousing, blah, 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 you know, but the best of them, and there were many of them, understood that it was an important thing to do. And here was the point, particularly for an athlete, there were few things to them that were more difficult to explain than a sick kid. Because with some exceptions, you know, that part of them had always worked. They had physical gifts that, you know, that most of their pals didn't. And to look at a child that was just kind of restrained by that sort of thing just tore him up. And I was struck by how many of them, you know, would actually reach out to families and kind of carry them along in their circle of associations, if not friends. And I wound up thinking, well, that's what the novel has to be about, isn't it? And the ways in which, you know, a lot of these athletes had an active empathy that motivated and you know, fueled their lives and took it in a different direction.
Oh, that's great. We're close. We're actually a little bit over the end of the hour. So I just wanted to, of course, say thank you so very much
My
to
pleasure.
you, Scott. What a great discussion, and for spending time with us today. We really appreciate that. Of course,
My pleasure.
We loved hearing you read from your book, and you know, this much needed moment of positivity and kindness during these tough times. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you to Jeff Hauser and the wonderful staff at Challenge Aspen. Thank you to everyone who took the time to ask questions and for attending. We hope you'll keep listening to Aspen Public Radio. Of course, you can hear Scott Simon on our radio station, of course. And we would like to thank everybody who is supporting our independent nonprofit news service during this historic year.
Yeah.
If you'd like to become a member, you can certainly do that at aspenpublicradio.org. We really appreciate your support. And thank you again to everyone who took the time to attend and have some uplifting moments during this challenging time. We're so very grateful to everyone who attended, and of course our partners at Challenge Aspen. And again, finally to Scott Simon for sharing such a great reading and information on what inspired you to make this book. So thank you again to everybody. Please stay healthy and safe this fall season, and we really appreciate you joining us. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.